If you want to see me perform live, join me every Wednesday at 10 p.m. for Ty Rivera and Friends. I manifested all of this, and it is as great as I thought it would be. Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of Slumber Party. I'll tell you what I didn't manifest, though. One thing I did not manifest is this. I'm not sure if it's deodorant or if it's a little bleach stain or what it is on my wife beater right now. This wife beater needs to go anyway, so I wish that it hadn't turned out this way, but it is what it is, and it ain't what it ain't. And I am really just coming on to, I didn't move around the way my set looks yet, which I will, but I'm the kind of person when it comes to me doing things that if I make anything too much work, then I'm just not going to do it. So it's better for me to actually just do this rather than worry about it being perfect. And then as I figure out more or more just comes to my mind's eye, as some might say, I will make the adjustments. I wanted to talk a little bit about the thing I said last time where I said that I manifested all of this. And it's just 100% true. Because what happened was there came a point in my existence since I've been here in Austin. And let me put a little disclaimer. Some things I say are going to sound weird. And you're just going to have to understand that I'm letting you in on my actual thinking. And one of the reasons that I'm continuing to do this podcast is because in doing this podcast, I found that there are some people that really, really get me, and not only really get me, but find themselves in similar positions to the one I'm in. And it won't be exact because a lot of the people that follow me aren't comedians. But at the same time, there are a lot of people that do relate to the way that I just have started to really only think about me, which we're told that we're not supposed to do that for some reason. But if you listen to any kind of self-help or anything like that, you'll notice that there is a recurring theme where there does come a point where you have to just think about you. And so there, what I'm see, and these are the parts that I would want to edit where I'm really thinking, but I do feel like it's important for you guys to see that side of me too. Plus, you know, like some of it doesn't make sense to some people in the first place because I don't think a lot of people have necessarily been in my position just as far as really being good at something, because there are a lot of things that I'm not good at. There are a lot of things that I don't have any interest in. Stand-up comedy is just something I loved ever since I was a kid, and it was a good escape for me when I was a kid. And I did need to escape a lot when I was a kid. So when I would watch stand-up, I would just really tune everything else out and love just laughing. And so I figured out a lot subconsciously just by watching it so much about timing and about writing jokes and about punchlines and all the things that people end up learning later in life when they actually start to do stand-up. I was learning as a kid, and I didn't even realize I was learning it. I just knew that I loved watching it. Like Louis Anderson was one of my favorite comedians, Roseanne Barr, Whoopi Goldberg, even though her style was a little closer to a one-woman show type style. I don't agree with Whoopi Goldberg and a lot of her craziness now, I'll tell you that. But I still do respect her as a comic, and as a funny person. There are some comedians that everybody loves that I don't necessarily love, like Jerry Seinfeld. I've never been a huge Jerry Seinfeld fan. Robin Williams, the late Robin Williams, I never liked his brand of funny and that frenetic, ADHD, overly amped. It's like, shut up, just stop. And some of you are going to get upset with that. So go ahead and tune out. I get it. I know not everybody's going to love me. Lyndon and Bijou, behave. Both of you, please behave. I don't know what they're getting into it about. There is currently puppy slander going on about me on the internet, which I'll end up talking about that at some point. Somebody's trying to start a rumor that I'm not nice to my dogs, which if I wasn't nice to my dogs, they wouldn't be behaving like this right now, or should I say misbehaving like this right now. Anyway, what I was trying to get at with the fact that I've manifested all of this is there came a point in my time here in Austin that I just stopped being happy with performing and with being around some of the characters here in Austin. And it's nothing against anybody in a personal way where it's like, oh, I just hated that person so much, or I couldn't stand this person. It wasn't like that. It was just, it got to a point where I felt like I had a fair amount of fake people around me. And I don't do well with fake relationships. I don't do well with small talk. Also, I will mention just really quickly, just so nobody thinks that I'm not ignoring them, I will be answering a few questions on this podcast because there was one person that sent me a super thanks and asked me a question, and I definitely will be answering your question during this episode. Just let me do things in my own way, and I definitely will get to it, I promise. For anybody that wants to ask me a question, especially if you think it's going to get on my nerves or it's an obnoxious question, just attach a super thanks to it. Attach a $sign to it, and you'll find I'm way more amiable once I'm being paid. But here's and some of you will have questions and not have money to ask that question. Go ahead and post it in the comments. I might answer it. It's not like I'm only answering if you're paying me. I mean, like, I wish I lived in that world. But to be serious, if you can't afford to do a super thanks, ask your question anyway. And if I feel like it, then I'll answer it. Or if I feel like it deserves an answer, because sometimes people will leave me, like, I appreciate everybody's comments, but sometimes people will leave like a ridiculously long paragraph and they start off with something negative. And I'll be honest with you guys, I'm shutting everything negative out of my life. So anything that I feel like doesn't hit me the right way or doesn't serve me in any particular way, I'm not reading it. I don't care. I don't need you to comment that badly that I'm going to put up with any type of abuse. That's technically part of why I'm doing what I'm doing now, is because I refuse to put up with abuse. So if anybody thinks that I'm going to put up with it online after I wouldn't put up with it in real life, sorely mistaken. That's all I'll say. But I really felt like I had a lot of fake people around me at a point, and a lot of people talking to me just to talk. And as far as the show went, and the podcast went, Tuesdays at 10 p.m. was usually when we would record the podcast. And that's the oven. I'm baking sweet potatoes. There's a way that I do it. Trust me, we'll be fine for this episode. When this episode is over, my sweet potatoes will be ready for me to turn off the heat. Once I turn off the heat, then they go ahead and shrink into their peel or whatever you would call it, and then they're perfect. Then you can just pull them apart. So anyway, that's neither here nor there. But if you want to hit me up, maybe I'll leave the process for making my sweet potatoes down below in the description box. Check it out. Maybe check out my Patreon as well. But and thank you to everybody for the super thanks, because a fair amount of people on the last episode sent me super thanks and did not ask questions. I appreciate it either way. You guys are very much appreciated. But what I was trying to get at is, when it came to the show, or the podcast, we would record at 10 p.m. on Tuesday nights. And Tuesday nights, I would also print out the flyers, because Hunter Parker, and we would always have two other comics help him out with it. But Hunter Parker was the main one. He was practically my co-producer, and I really appreciated Hunter. But he would go out and he would bark. And if you're not familiar with barking, that's when they'll bark you into the show. They'll go hand you a flyer and say, hey, there's a comedy show at Creek. And so they would do that, and I would have to print out the flyers. I would print them out here at home, and then I would take them to Hunter, and I have a paper cutter that I was very happy about because I bought it and it's like one of the ones from school where you like, that kind of thing. And I don't know why, but it really made me happy to buy that. And so, but I wasn't a fan of having to print it out because Tuesdays are really busy for me. So I would try to find a time when I would print them out and have them ready for Tuesday, but sometimes that didn't always work with my schedule, which is a small thing, but it would just be one of those things that every Tuesday I go see my doctor and I get my gender affirming care. I've talked about it before on the podcast. I am on testosterone, which is just like a maintenance amount of testosterone, not at all to like become bulky or whatever. It's not human growth hormone or anything like that. It's just regular testosterone because at my age, 25, I needed to, I was deficient in testosterone. And so I went to a legit doctor. It's not like any kind of, at home thing or whatever, which nothing against the people that do the at home version, because some people do inject themselves and they also have the need, but they just go to a different care provider. My doctor has me come in next week. I have to go in to get blood work and to check my cholesterol and all that stuff. But that's every Tuesday. And my doctor is all the way out in Round Rock, which is about 35 minutes away from where I'm at. And so that takes up a good part of my time. Also, because of the editing and the videos that I do and the podcast and everything else, my sleep schedule is different from a lot of people's. Like, for example, today I didn't go to sleep until 1 p.m. Because there was a video that I wanted to post, and so I had to record that last night. I had to edit it. A lot of times my videos are on somewhat current events, so when I record them, I have to record them and edit them within kind of the same sitting. So, and that will take me anywhere from 4 to 8 hours, depending on how much editing I'm doing and how long the video is. So between 4 and 8 hours is spent doing that. So for the people that think like maybe I'm just lazy or laying around all the time, I definitely do not live that kind of life. Technically, I'm pretty busy most of the time. That's why when people hit me with a lot of like, let's hang out type stuff, or let's go have lunch, or let's have coffee. One, I don't drink coffee. And two, there's better ways that I can be spending my time. Also, I do go to the gym 6 days a week. That's just part of my thing. It keeps my mind healthy. It keeps me the way that I need to do. Lately, I've been better about meditating. I'm pretty good about meditating now. I also do journal. And so there's kind of a lot of things that I have to do in a regular day. And for me, when I go to the gym, that's usually going to be between 2 and 3 hours that I'm at the gym, and it's because I do my cardio and my weights, in the same trip to the gym. And then there's also a little bit of like, I'll be honest, my cardio is so strenuous, and I do 35 minutes on the treadmill, and then after that I immediately go to the sauna. And so like when I'm done with my cardio, which takes about an hour or whatever, then I do have to like take a minute in the locker room, and also, I'm soaking wet with sweat. And so I really do like relax for a minute in the locker room and just let everything chill out a little bit before I go to the weights. And then so like total, like I said, 3 hours, but it's like 2 hours at the gym or 2 hours and whatever. And then when I'm out, I run my errands and that kind of stuff. So yeah, 3 hours that I'm gone from my place. Anyway, I say that to say that it became kind of a grind having to be at the studio, which is in the creek, to record the podcast every Tuesday around 10 p.m. And I didn't mind doing it, though, because I felt like me and Justin were really working on something. Producer Justin, who sent me a message the other day after I released the episode about Rebecca and Joe Rogan. It was called Joe Rogan is a Liar. I stand by that. But Justin hit me up and said that, he really cared about me and I'd hurt his feelings. And I just sent him back I really don't care. And it's not to be insensitive, but I am not at all worried about anybody's feelings because in this process, I have truly found that nobody is worried about mine, which I already pretty much knew, but I think people have a lot of nerve when they hit me up, and I really do like Justin. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that I don't like him right now, but what I am saying is there were plenty of places where I feel like Justin could have stepped in and been maybe a little bit more helpful in maybe mediating or moderating the situation between me and Rebecca, maybe letting her know a couple of things that she probably should have known. Also, for anybody to act surprised when this is what we've been doing, because with Justin, we would talk about the episodes and we would talk about the things I was saying, and I would tell him what my thinking was behind everything. And he, of all people, should have known how little I cared about anybody's feelings at this point. So the fact that he would think that this would all happen with the podcast being taken away and the show being taken away, and within the same week, and when I had asked, because for me, like I said, I did manifest all of this and it was what I wanted, but what I didn't expect was the way that it happened, because I felt like it should have just been handled respectfully. We could have finished out one more week of the podcast. We could have finished out one more week of the show, which would have been last week, and then wrapped everything up, and it would have been completely amicable, and I would have said something that was kind of a cover story just to be a professional about it, and that would have been the end of it. But the way that it was done, I just felt like was Rebecca was trying so hard to prove her loyalty to Adam and the mothership that I just couldn't respect it. And I don't really care how anybody feels about that. I don't need anybody hitting me up and telling me about their feelings. I have feelings too. Am I hitting anybody up? I don't think I am. As a matter of fact, I know I'm not. So all I do is talk on my podcast about it because I think in the coming months and even the next year, couple of years, there are going to be a lot of comics on the Austin scene that are going to feel like they're in a position similar to the one that I'm in, except for where I chose this, they're going to find themselves in situations where they didn't necessarily choose it, and they might feel a particular way about it. And I think that also by watching me, maybe they can understand and not go to a dark place with it, because it would be so busy for me on Tuesday that I really would. Sorry, Lyndon's under my foot literally under my foot right now. Like he put his body under there. Do you want to come up? You want to come up? Come here. Come here. If you want to come up, come up. Let me see my boy. Let me see my little man. Well, then leave me alone. Okay, come here. Hold on. Never mind. He's not. He wants to, but he's being annoying right now. He's not working with me, and I don't have the time to put into it. I don't have time for anybody right now, including Lyndon B. Johnson. But so it would be such a busy day, and I would have to do that every Tuesday. And then, that means that I'm not editing at that particular time, which a lot of times I would want to be editing a video or recording a video, and then we'd do the podcast from 10 to, well, usually we'd start at like 10:30 or 10:45, and then we'd do about an hour. Then me and Justin would hang out, smoke a cigarette, recap a little bit about what was talked about on the episode, also just catch up on life type of stuff. I really do enjoy Justin's company. I do hope he eventually understands why it is I got annoyed with him. The other thing is, like I said on the last episode, I had asked him about the episodes that we had already recorded, because the way that the podcast was originally supposed to work was I had come up with this idea where on Wednesdays I would put out the videos where we'd be interviewing, or it would be an episode that we had recorded with Nick and Hooch. And then Sundays would be kind of the day for the cheese mess, so you guys could get the gossip and find out what was going on in my life and my situation with all the different little dramas that have happened here on the Austin comedy scene, and just my opinions on those kinds of situations. So That was the way that it was supposed to work. So when Justin told me that he wasn't giving me my episode, which he didn't really tell me, but he pretty much alluded to the fact that he wasn't going to give me the episodes that I have, that he was just supposed to send over to me. It was supposed to be as simple as that. Was he was just supposed to send my stuff to me. And the fact that he wasn't going to do that or didn't do that, I don't mind that, but just as people show me what they're doing, that lets me know that I don't have to be loyal to those people. So I don't have to care about your feelings when you're like, well, some of the things you said, maybe I wasn't happy with. I don't care. Like, why would I care? Like, you've already let me know you don't care about me. So why am I holding space for you? Oh, yeah, that's right. I'm not. It's just not the way it's going to work out. And so I really was not liking that grind. Also, I knew that I was going to have to move the podcast to my place anyway, because there was there were things that I wasn't comfortable with, just as far as anybody else having control over my words. Because if I say certain things at the creek, as is evidenced by the way that this has all turned out, then Rebecca could think that's reflecting on the creek, and then she could decide to not let me use the podcast space, which is what eventually happened. So I knew that that could eventually happen. Also, there is a part of me that understands certain parts of that, but that doesn't mean that I want to change what I'm doing because of it. So I knew that eventually me and Justin were going to have a talk about him either coming over to my place and we produce the podcast here, or they would have to just let me do whatever I want there and just understand that I was going to do what I wanted to do anyway. But that in the long run, I knew that wasn't going to be an actual option because, for example, Rebecca recently had at the Creek Tom Segura, and I think Tom Segura's stand-up is hot shit. I just think it's fucking trash. And so I wanted to talk about that, and not anything to do with the fact that he was there, but just it was something I was thinking about as part of another story I wanted to tell about stand-up and where I think the state of stand-up is right now, and podcasting, and Bert Kreischer and Tom Segura, who I think both of their stand-up is shit. I really just do. Just comic to comic and nothing to do with anything personal because I don't know them like that. Tom Segura I've never met. Bert Kreischer I've met, and we're cool. I mean, like, we don't really know each other. We're just like, we've seen each other, and I've been pleasant anytime we've had to interact on the most minute level, because he's a person I really haven't had a lot of interactions with. But just as far as his stand-up goes, I don't like it. I don't think he's funny. And so I knew that eventually I was going to want to be able to say stuff. And then, you know, when it comes to, like, people have asked me about Brian Simpson and Tim Dillon and what their thoughts are on what's been going on. I really haven't talked to either of them, and that's not at all unusual for me. But like I said on the last episode, when I talked about Brian Simpson, I really do love him and I consider him a good friend. But if he doesn't like what I'm doing, that's not my business. And I feel the same way about Tim Dillon. Like, I can't not do what I'm doing or say what I'm saying or say what I think is important because other people might feel a particular way about it. That's just not the way my life is working at this point. Were there times in my career where I have had to do that? Most definitely. And when I was doing it, did it feel like a complete punishment? No, not really. It was just kind of the way life was going at that point. But I've just grown to a point as a person where I don't really know how that benefits me anymore. Because I don't really know. Like, before, I kind of understood because I was a lot more involved in kind of the industry side, even though I didn't really pay attention to it that much. Like, when I was in LA, I mean, like, you know, I did the whole, like, game of it as far as, you know, I've been on Comedy Central twice. Usually you have to play the game a little bit to do that kind of stuff. I was a paid regular at every club except for the Comedy Store, but every single club I was a paid regular in LA, and Comedy Store always treated me like a regular. And so I really was, and it was like I said, it wasn't that it wasn't hard for me to keep a lot of my thoughts to myself and just be my own thing. Also, I feel like I had to spend those years just keeping my mouth shut and learning and seeing the way things worked. Even though I had been in it for 10 years at that time, 12 years at that time, I still felt like I had a lot to learn. And now I feel like I still have a lot to learn as far as stand up goes. But as far as the industry side, I don't really care about that. So if I don't care about that, but the people around me want me to care about that, then eventually I'll just separate from the people around me. So I knew that that was eventually going to happen with the podcast. And so, and then when it came to the show, I was trying to keep the show going for as long as I could because I did want to continue to offer opportunities to some of the newer stand-ups. Some of the open mic guys are ready to kind of graduate or at least get a taste of being on the actual stage during Creek or at Creek during an actual show. And if I could be the one to provide that opportunity, I definitely did want to do that. But I was tired of the grind of showing up to the show. And I had only run my show for like 2 months, 3 months, something like that. And so it wasn't like I had to put up with it for too long. But again, if I'm more interested in editing and doing that kind of stuff, then why am I going to take time out of doing that to go do the show? And yeah, we were building the show, but as it stood, the show wasn't really making a lot of money. So it's not like, oh yeah, well, I have to take time out of what I'm doing, but I'm making all this money. It wasn't like that. And so, like I knew that eventually that was going to have to end. And the last couple of weeks I had really thought about it because I was just getting tired of it. So like I said, it's not like I had a problem with the fact that I don't do the podcast anymore or the show got canceled. It really was a matter of the way it happened. And also when it came to Rebecca, there was a point where she just stopped communicating with me and she started trying to be kind of cold with me. And I just feel like, well, you're not that important. I don't even know what you're doing right now. You're making a fool of yourself because I don't see you that way at all. And so, I don't like people who blow hot and cold with me. Either be cool or not be cool. And we can all have an off day. Like, I understand that some days I don't want to talk to anybody, and that's not anything personal about anybody. But when I know that you're trying to let me know you're not happy about something, bitch, I'm not your husband. So I don't even know why you would think this is a good place for that. It's just not what it is. And so, and I don't regret anything I said about Rebecca or anything I've said about anybody so far. And the reason is because one day if they ever decide to approach me in any way or decide to be cool, because I don't have a problem with anybody to where I would never speak with them again or I consider them sworn enemies. And that goes for anybody I've talked about on my podcast. But at the same time, I do need people to know that I did mean the stuff that I say and that I feel like moving forward, you should be very clear about where your spot is in my life and where I consider you to be in the pecking order or in the hierarchy of things. So when it comes to Rebecca, yeah, you should know that I don't have a high opinion of you. I don't look at you as a boss bitch or whatever it is you're trying to put out there. I don't buy into it even a little bit, especially not after what's happened. So any of that front with me, cut that all together. Just talk to me like we're either cool and we're friends or don't talk to me at all. Which I'm not going to pretend that I feel any way about saying that kind of stuff about people. When it comes to Tony Hinchcliffe, everything I said on the episode about him, I thought he should know. Kim Congdon, everything I said about her, I thought she should know. Right now, people are online saying some shit about my dogs. It's the weirdest thing because I get so many positive messages about Lyndon when you see the videos and Lyndon is playing in the background and being ridiculous, which is 100% by his choice. People ask me if I trained him to like. Friends have asked me if I trained him to like do that. Well, and I'm like, how would I even train a dog to know to play back there while I'm recording? Like he just does what he does, and he likes being close to me and the sound of my voice, which I don't know why. He's at my foot again. But he does like being close to me and by the sound of my voice, so he, plays on the bed right there. So there was this comment on my latest video, which is the trans track one, um, and somebody had like said, because like I know why they did it, because you don't get a notification on YouTube when people comment or respond to one of the comments. Like a different user leaves a comment, you don't get respond, or you don't get a notification that somebody has responded to that person's comment, which makes sense. But you don't know what people are saying on there. So for some reason, like somebody had, well, no, this is what happened. Somebody had sent me a super thanks. And so that you get a specific notification for. So I checked that notification, and then I saw that somebody had put under the super thanks, you're supporting an animal abuser right now. You're sending your money to an animal abuser. And I was like, this can't be on my thread, or that can't be in reference to me. And so I like scanned it a little bit, and then there was a person on there saying, yeah, there's pictures and videos of him abusing his dogs on the internet. That dog in the background is being abused, and it's like a bunch of stuff like that. And I'm like, what is this? Where is this even coming from right now? And then there's this one of the comments said something about like, Kim Congdon has talked about it, and it's like, Kim Congdon, even though we had our thing, I don't think would ever say anything that ridiculous. Also, Kim Congdon has never been around me and my dogs. Also, me and my dogs spend most of our time by ourselves, just us three. And also, if I were abusing my dogs, you think I would be stupid enough to record it on video or take pictures of it and then post that or upload it anywhere? I mean, like, what world do people live in that somebody would do that in the first place? So that was very annoying to see that, because it was like several of them, which I'm pretty sure I know who did it. And it's like, they probably hired like bots off Fiverr, people to like, act as bots off Fiverr. I mean, like, that's what I would imagine it is. So that was annoying to me, but only because it looked like, and now I realize that it was just more of what they had paid off of Fiverr that were making it seem like they were actually believing that. Because if you've ever seen my dogs and the way they interact or the way that they play behind me, that's not the behavior of dogs that are going through any kind of abuse. My dogs are very strong-willed, like Bijou, which everybody watches me on Instagram, or anybody that watches me on Instagram and pays attention to my stories has seen the way my dogs are. Bijou is such a strong-willed little dog that she doesn't even come to me when I call her most of the time. I mean, like, if it's something important and I give her like my real, like, puppy, I need you right now, she'll come to me, but she will not. She's just not doing it. And it's one of the things I like most about my relationship with Bijou is she's a little independent dog, and she does what she wants to, and she, like, hangs out with me when she wants to, and when she doesn't want to, she doesn't want to. But she's very independent. Lyndon is a lot more of a baby and likes to be on me. He likes to be on my chest. He, like, right now he's being cool again and by himself, but there's toys everywhere again, because he'll throw his toys everywhere. She has a million toys, and some of them I have to throw away at different points because he'll tear them up. But, when it comes to Bijou especially, I've had her for 11 years now. And for those of you that don't know the story, she got kidnapped right in front of me by a coyote back in September was when that happened. And it really was the most surreal feeling, and the only time I've ever really felt like a bad dad, because I wasn't paying attention to her, because I was so used to us just walking off. Now I always have her on the leash when we're outside, But I'm so used to having her off leash because I've had her for, like I said, 10 years, going on 11 years now. Cinco de Mayo will be 11 years, our 11 years together. Her birthday, I call it. But um, she's so well behaved and does what she's supposed to do when she's off leash. And at those points when I call her, she comes. Like, when she's off leash and we're outside, she really does pay attention to me. And so I just wasn't paying attention. I was on Grinder and then, like scrolling, and then all of a sudden, I heard a weird yelp I've never heard her make before. And then I looked up and it was dark and my eyes adjusted. And when my eyes adjusted, I noticed there was a coyote that had her in his mouth like a baby, like when they carry puppies, and took off running with her. And I chased after him, but Lyndon was little and on the leash at the time. And so his little legs couldn't keep up. But, I picked him up and then ran into the neighbor's yard. Well, one of the guys that lives in the neighboring house's yard. And that's not smart to do in Texas. I'm lucky I didn't get shot. And that guy made a big deal of it. I didn't do an update on the story after I let everybody know that Bijou was still alive. But the way that the story worked out was the next day, because I looked for her and I thought the coyote probably ended up killing her, and it was the most surreal feeling. Like, I couldn't believe this was actually happening. And and of course, like right before I went to sleep, because we always sleep together, I cried, which I'm not a huge crier, but like I really did cry on that one because I thought my puppy was gone forever. That's what I thought. And then the next day I got a call from the Austin Animal no, the chip company, and they let me know that Bijou was at Austin Animal Services. And so that was a whole thing where, of course, right away I went to pick her up. They asked me, like, do you want us to just put her down, that kind of thing. And I was like, can you just give me an address and I'll go pick up my dog, please? And so then, I had to sign this paper that said I would take her to the emergency hospital. So I took her to the emergency hospital, and, so that happened. And there's a part of me that wondered if some Pet Cemetery shit happened and Bijou just made sure to make her way back to me, however she had to make her way back to me. And there was a moment where I felt like that. But now all I feel like is I got my dog back, and I don't care how she got back to me. All I know is my baby loves me enough that she made it back to me, and that's all I needed. Was she a little bit mad at me for a little while? Yeah, and I think it was because obviously I'm not in her little doggy head. I don't think she was mad at me because the coyote took her away. I think she was mad at me because she thinks I left her out there. I think she thought at that point that I didn't go get her, not realizing that I didn't have a way of knowing where she was. And so, but I never did the update where I would mention, or would have mentioned, that the neighbor, that same one that I ran into his yard, and he did make a big deal of it because, he thought I was trying to rob him or whatever, which if you know the area I live in, I could see how he would think that. But at the same time, I really did need to look for Bijou. But he ended up finding her in his yard, and because when Austin Animal Services, I went to pick her up, they didn't have any information on who had dropped her off. But apparently he had found her in the yard, and then his wife took her down to to Austin Animal Services, and that's the way that all played out. And he had gone to the office of my building because I had told him when he was yelling at me, and I was yelling back at him about Bijou, like my dog being, taken by a coyote. At first he was like, yeah, he didn't believe me. He thought I was trying to like steal from his yard or whatever. And, but then he was like, yeah, when you told me that you lived over there, he was like, I tried to like go to the office and tell them that, there's a guy and his dog, and like they didn't know who I was talking about and that kind of stuff. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. And so I thanked him though, because like at the end of the day, like he made sure to, or him and his wife made sure to make sure that Bijou got to Austin Animal Services, and they were able to do everything they needed to do from there, finding me. So I was still thankful to him, even though he was an asshole on that particular night. But I get it. You're kind of worried that you think somebody's trying to steal from your yard. So I say that to say that this little annoying dog, I love her so much that what ended up happening was, I don't know if you guys know this part of the story, but originally I got Lyndon so that him and Bijou could give me a grandbaby. That's why I got Lyndon originally. And so, because, Bijou is getting older, but I did all the research and, she's a beast and she could have safely had a litter of puppies. And also, I knew that having a litter of puppies would be good for her reproductive organs because if not, things don't function the way that they're supposed to function. So when she had her heat cycle after I got Lyndon, what happened was Lyndon was still too young to get the job done or know what he had to do, and so like they weren't able to mate. So, which is understandable and acceptable, whatever. I wasn't tripping, I was like, "We'll get him on the next one, you guys." But then on New Year's Eve exactly, Bijou ended up like what happened was she wasn't acting herself for a couple of days, and I was just thinking that maybe she was going through one of her weird phases or whatever, because sometimes when they're in heat they are like people when they're like like a woman on their period, because that's basically what it is. So their little mood changes, and so and she's still my baby, so she'll still be sweet with me and everything like that, but it does change their mood and their attitude a little bit. So she was being standoffish and weird with me a little bit and choosing to sleep in her bed, which she's always slept in my bed. Every once in a while she'll go to her bed like in the middle of the night or whatever, or she'll start off in her bed and then I wake up and she's in bed with me. So she's like that, but like for the most part, almost every night she sleeps with me. So I had gone like a couple of nights with her not sleeping with me, and I got like, because at first I'm like, Bijou just being Bijou. And then I did get like, wait a second, why has my little dog not been sleeping with me for this many nights? Because it was like 2 or 3 nights in a row that she did not sleep with me. So I went to her little bed and I picked her up and I was like, you're going to sleep with me, Bijou. And so I picked her up, took her to the bed, and like we were sleeping for a little bit, and then you know how you're like just moving or whatever, and like I noticed that there was a wet spot on the bed, and so I was like, that's weird. And I know my Bijou, like, my Bijou is the most potty trained puppy ever. She's so good about that. Like ever since she was a puppy, like, when she was a puppy, she was a puppy. And every once in a while she would have an accident or whatever. But ever since, like, maybe it's 6 months in probably, because she's litter box trained too. But 6 months in, she never has accidents. She just doesn't. And I know she wouldn't have an accident in my bed. And so I was like, what's that about? So I felt the wet spot. I went ahead and got up. I looked at the bed and I saw that it was blood. And I checked, her in general, and there's no blood. And so, then I checked down there, and which I don't know why I turn into a kid when it comes to Bijou, but just I guess because she's my baby. But I checked down there and I noticed there was blood, and I was like, that's weird. And so I get a piece of toilet paper and I check it, and it's like, like discharge. And so I was like, and this is literally New Year's Eve that this happened. So I take her to the emergency hospital, and they check her out, and of course her mood was different. Like I said, she just wasn't being herself. And so, at this point, I'm like, oh shit. And so they check her out at the emergency hospital, and the doctor tells me that she's got something called pyometra, which is where, like, after their heat cycle, because, she hit all the requirements. It had been like a month since her heat cycle, and like all the things that they say she lined up with. And so the doctor checked her and said that that's what it was, that it was pyometra. And so which, if I'm saying that wrong, please forgive me. I don't have the best memory or whatever, but I think that was what it was called, is pyometra. And so the doctor was like, look, I can have an emergency surgeon come in and take care of this now. It'll cost you $5,000 to $6,000 to do it right now. She was like, we can get it done today. But if you want to wait until your vet opens after the weekend, then, after the holiday, then you can go ahead and do that, and they should be able to take care of it. And so I had to be on the road. I think January 2nd was when I had to go on the road, or January 5th. I can't remember, but like, right after. And so I was like, all right, well, I just have to make this happen. And I already had an appointment for both of them. Just coincidentally, I had an appointment coming up for them right after New Year's because they had to get their shots. Lyndon had to get his last set of shots, and then Bijou just had to get her yearly. And so we already had an appointment, and I took her to so they gave me antibiotics for her, and they also gave me pain medication for her. And I don't remember how expensive that trip was, but it was an emergency hospital or an emergency checkup, and so it wasn't cheap, whatever it was. um and then I went to see our actual doctor, her regular vet, and he was like, yeah, we can get her in tomorrow. And so he was like, you have to be here at 6 in the morning. And I was like, done. And it like, it was still, I think $1,200 was how much it was for that. But and there was a part of me that thought, because I've heard that it changes their, like, one of the reasons I never wanted to get her fixed was, like, if you get them fixed when they're little puppies, then that's one thing because they just, stay the way they are. But if you get them fixed when they're older, then there's a chance they could go through depression and stuff like that, which a lot of people don't think of dogs in depression. But there's a chance that could happen because of it's like a woman having a hysterectomy. It changes your chemistry and the way your body works. And so I was worried about that with her. And there was a part of me that felt like, am I doing this for me? Because, if you don't take care of the pyometra, there's a good chance they're just going to die. And so I did have a moment where I thought to myself, am I doing this for me? Like, would it be better for me to just let her have lived for as long as she lives or lived, and then, put her to sleep, or tell them to put her to sleep because of the pyometra, and she would have to get which, like, I know this is weird, but this is the way that I think about my dog, just as far as like what's going to make her the most happy, not just me, because obviously I don't mind having her, go through the surgery. And I didn't care. Like, at that moment when because like, I was one of those people before I ever had a dog that would think, when people would tell me that they had paid amounts of money like that for like a dog surgery or whatever, I'd always be like, why would you even pay that in the first place? But you'd be surprised after you've had a dog how much your thinking changed. So when they told me that that's how much it cost, I was like, yeah, that's just what it's going to have to be. Of course, I'll pay for it. But then, like I said, then I started to think, like, is that what's best for her? And then I was talking to, I think it was my dad on the phone, and I mentioned something about that. And then he's the one that really put it in perspective for me, because, I obviously didn't want to put her to sleep, but in my head, I was just like, is that what's best for her? And then I was saying something to my dad, and my dad was like, yeah, it's kind of like when you had the hernia. And then I thought in my head, like, yeah, when I had my hernia, I just got my hernia fixed. Like, I never thought maybe I should just die with a hernia, or, you know what I mean? Maybe I should just end it all, or that kind of thing. It was like, yeah. And so that's the same way I thought about Bijou at that point, was she, and then I also thought about the fact that after the situation happened with the coyote, she made her way back to me. So I don't think she fought for life that way and to be back with me so that I could put her to sleep like 4 or 5 months later. So then it was just like, that was the course of action. And then I had to go on the road immediately after, and I had to fly, and I asked the doctor, can I take her? Is she clear to fly? And I had read different things online, and I really do trust her doctor. And he told me, he was like, yeah, she'll be fine. Just make sure that she's taking her antibiotics and her pain medication. And I could have had, at that time, little Nick and Hooch stayed with Lyndon, but I could have had them take care of Bijou too. But I took Bijou with me because I wanted to make sure that I was the one to give her medication, and I was the one to nurse her back to health. And right away, she did really well, I mean, like on the plane, she was fine, except for she was on her pain medication and that kind of stuff. And so, they're really more of my life than most people would imagine. And one of the reasons that I don't really want to be on the road is because Bijou doesn't really want to be on the road anymore. And little Lyndon, he's not ready to be on the road. And that's my fault because, I'm self-training him. So I handle everything. And with Bijou, she's trained really well. But it's like when you have kids, or what I've seen when people have kids, with your first one, you're on it. You're doing everything you should be. And then when you get to your second one, you're like, you know what? Let him be a baby. He's a puppy. Anyway, I made a video where I introduce everybody to them. But, you know, this is I said that there was a super thanks that I wanted to answer, and it was from a person called Breakdown 2999, and they sent me a super thanks. Thank you, Breakdown 2999. The comment was, I love Kill Tony and I love hearing the gossip. This is entertaining. I first learned about you from Kill Tony. Can I ask, now that you quit comedy, how do you make money to support yourself? I'm attaching money because this likely counts as an annoying question. Like you asked, and then smiley face, which, thank you. That really, on the scale of annoying questions, that isn't really that annoying of a question. I was never counting on the money that I was making here in town to sustain myself. Like, sometimes I go on the road, and when I go on the road, I've always talked about that. On the road is where you make your money to pay your bills. And then for the around town stuff, that would be like cigarette money, grocery money, gas money, that kind of stuff. So you're really not counting on that money to begin with. But and a lot of the stuff I've been doing lately, because like I said, I didn't want to be on the road that much, has been in town. And so this right now, even what I'm doing at this point in time, was all time that I had planned not being on the road. So it's not like I really had to think about that. But I will tell you that I do have a particular skill, and I'm not saying that in any kind of dirty way. I just don't want to talk about it publicly because a lot of people don't know it, and I don't want them to know it. But I do have a particular skill that is pretty marketable, and so if I want, I can do that. Also, I create content. Also, there is comedy coaching that I do sometimes. And for comedy coaching, I usually get paid really well for that. And that will be like an hourly type thing. And then I have different deals as far as that goes, where it's like, pay this much money and then do that. And I'm really good at that, because I've been doing stand-up so long. But then there's also, if I wanted to, I'm sure I could do editing as well. If you haven't noticed, like, on my videos, I am pretty good with editing. So I'm sure I could do that kind of work if I wanted to. Also, I am going back on the road for a couple of dates over the summer. I think May is one of my first dates, which I'll start announcing more as we get closer. But I think I'm doing 2 different weekends in May and then another one in July, I think. And so that's, and so but the main thing with me is I don't really think in those terms anyway. I am literally at this point in time, I take my life in the moment. So everything's good now. Everything's paid now. So I'm not really thinking about, what I'm going to do in the next however long. I know that, for the immediate future, everything's great, everything's cool, everything's paid. And so, And like, excuse me, I don't think a lot of people understand that I am as good as I say I am at stand up. That's like one of the things that people don't, because you'll see people online being like, this guy can't be that good if he's, well, anybody that's ever seen me do stand up will tell you that I really am good at it. And so I don't really have to worry about things the way that some people do. Like, I can do my own thing. I can go do an independent show. I can go back on the road if I have to and take my dogs with me and drive everywhere if I want to. I mean, I have so many options that I don't think of things in the same terms a lot of people do, where it's like, what am I going to do next? What's going to happen? It's like, it'll be fine. I'll figure it out. And I don't know, because like a lot of the stuff that I've done, which I've talked about this before too, like, is true road work. So it really is like not at all connected to the industry part. So they don't care about anything that happened at Mothership. They don't care about Creek and Cave. They don't know Rebecca. They don't know Adam. Joe Rogan is a guy that has a podcast and a very successful comedian as far as a lot of the shows I do or the places that I would do go, but they're not thinking about it in any way where it's like, we have to make sure that we don't have these people because these people don't like them. Like, that's not what my existence has been in this industry. So, like for the last several years now, like I said, there, when I was in LA, it was a little more like that, but that's also part of why I left LA, which on the next episode, it'll be a real gossip one. You know what I mean? I'll talk about like all the stuff that, like, this one has been like one of the chill, like just for the people that really get me type of situation, or the people that really care. I'm not even going to do like heavy promo on this one. Like, I'll put it out there that it's out, but I'm not going to do like this is for the people that really do fuck with me, as the kids would say. Like, that's what this one is for. But I'll talk about like the different cities and what caused me to leave the different cities that I've lived in, because I've done stand up and actively done stand up in LA, Phoenix, Las Vegas, and now Austin. Obviously, I left each of those cities. And in those cities, I did have different things happen, but people make it seem like I got run out of cities or that people got tired of me in those cities. I get tired of people. Do people get tired of me back at a point? Sometimes. But usually, people really want to be friends with me, and there comes a point where I run out of patience for whatever the bullshit is on a particular scene, and there's bullshit in every scene. And so there comes a point for me where I get like, yeah, I don't like this bullshit and I don't want to deal with it. And so but that's kind of life for me. I mean, like, for right now, I love Austin as a city. So when people ask me if I'm leaving Austin, I'm not at all thinking about leaving Austin. But if I'm offered more money somewhere else, or if there's a better situation for me somewhere, then I'll leave. But I don't really have any, I'm not thinking about that in any real way. I mean, like, I can be me from wherever I am. Also, like, I love making people laugh and I love entertaining people, and that's mostly what I do on my channel. And I can do that for a lot more people off of the internet than I can off of going from city to city, town to town. So I feel like if I really do everything the way I'm supposed to, as far as content creation and the different platforms, not just YouTube, but also Twitter. I also have a Patreon if anybody wants to subscribe to the Patreon. But there's so many options for me that I don't really think about, like, in that panic way where it's like, what am I going to do? I don't know. So that should answer your question. you know. Um, Mainly, I just really want to work on me. Is what I want to do right now, which it sounds kind of hippie and weird, but it really is why. I wanted the time to myself and to not have to be, because, when it comes to all that stuff that I mentioned, it all added up to like me not doing some of the work that I need to do on myself. And I've made no secret about, at some point in my life, I do want to get married. And at some point in my life, I do want to have one kid at least. Two might be nice, but one kid at least before my life is said and done. And so a lot of times what I hear the thinking on that to be, and something that I have subscribed to more and more as I get older, is that you should be the person that you want to marry. And in the last year or couple of months, half year, whatever, I asked myself that question. And I was like, in my head, I was like, be as honest with yourself as you can. Are you the person that you want to marry? And the honest answer to that is no. I'm not the person I want to marry. And so, if I'm not the person I want to marry, how am I going to attract a person that wants to marry me? So, maybe I should work on myself, and not for that purpose, because I've accepted that that may not be in the cards for me. I'm not a religious person, but I do believe in God, and I do believe that God's plan is better than my own. That's one thing I found out in my life, because I've always had a way that I wanted to do things, or I thought I did, and then God would show me a different way, and then I'd be like, yeah, you're right, that is a better way, or that is something that I hadn't considered in a better way. And so, but my plan is to, just work on me as a person, because I don't by any stretch think I'm perfect. I mean, I do like the person I am. I'm not going to lie to you and pretend that, I hate myself, or I wish I hadn't done this, I wish I hadn't done that. I like me a lot, and I stand behind the decisions I've made and the way that I think at this point in my life. There were points in my life where I couldn't say that, where I would feel like, yeah, I wish I had done that differently, or that wasn't the best choice, or I wasn't the nicest person right there, which I don't worry about being nice, but at the same time, sometimes when I was younger, I was unnecessarily not nice. I don't know if I'd say mean, but just unnecessarily not pleasant, in younger years. But more recently, when I think about a lot of my interactions with people, I feel like, yeah, that's the right pitch for that one. But, moving forward, I would like to evolve even more and handle things even better, because there's always room for improvement. And so that's what I would say. I hope that the people that truly listen to me and truly pay attention to, you know, what it is I'm going through, like this episode. And if you guys are here for the tea, I'll definitely be giving you more of that on Sunday. But this one was just a let's catch up type episode and let you know how I feel about things and where I'm at with the way things have worked out. Anyway, thank you for watching Slumber Party.